Package arrived yesterday all the way from Great Britain, and these I'm assuming are the rudder parts. So these are made to order specifically for Elfyn. Well, Elf, and we're really hoping it's going to fit on Elfyn. Nobody seemed to really be able to answer that question when we inquired about that online. So took about, I don't know, 4 weeks, 5 weeks for production and now delivery. Well packaged here. I just don't want to cut into something that I'm not supposed to. So these parts are made by Classic Marine in some town, I don't remember exactly where, in Great Britain. But it's specifically a rod that the rudder can travel on to lift it up out of the water because of the curved nature of the whole assembly. Got a pintle. Gudgeon. And a second gudgeon. So now I hope they haven't forgotten, but I also ordered the mast traveler, which hoists the mast up, and that's a custom piece as well. So the idea is that this traveler here sits on the stem. All right, I think I have it figured out. So wondering how one gets this piece on, but it has a notch in here so that you can fit it over the rod, attach it to the rudder. The top one goes on the outside of the pin, and this pin will fit onto the stem. So the idea is, you can imagine, this is all clamped together. Let's put this down here. Because I don't have this attached yet, but the rod shifts down, or the rudder shifting up, so that this can then sit onto this pin and hold it out of the water. Right now it's time to get the drawings for the rudder assembly out, and it looks like the bottom bracket literally sits right at the bottom of the rudder itself, like so. And that's going to sit right at the bottom. So that's going to denote where this is going to sit. With that in mind, I've been holding off on putting the extra panel on the top portion of the rudder here, as it was indicated that I should wait until the hardware came in so we can see exactly where the hardware is supposed to go. But if I put some tape down and trace out that pattern, we can see what another piece, and I'll probably put some nice dark piece of red cedar on here on both sides. It's another 1/4 inch, or even a bit more, because I think my rudder is just a little bit under the dimensions or the thickness required, because there's just a tiny bit of slop in there, but that will pinch for closed quite nicely. So we need the thickness of the rudder to be exactly, well, less than 1 1/4 inches on the inside here. Just a hair. Currently, my rudder is 5/8. So it was supposed to be a 3/4, so we're about 3/16 under. So the cheek plates need to be a little more than 1/4. And then we can plane it down until that fits on there super tight. The other thing that I think I will do is possibly laminate a very thin piece of mahogany onto the edge here, just to cover up all of the joinery. Look a little nicer. Not sure I could get one to wrap all the way around the ends, but no one will really look at the bottom of that. I don't think anyways. So I think the first thing would be is to glue on that piece, a little oversized, and then trim it down flush and then add the cheeks. Cut a piece of mahogany about, I don't know, 3/16, which will bend quite nicely and fit into here. Okay, we want this side out, only because there is a bit of a saw mark in there, which is going to prevent a nice tight fitting, and it's a little extra thick. So now, how in the heck are we going to clamp it in there? I'll get some tape on there. I think what I'll do is put it into the vise here. I have a piece of nice clear cedar underneath my plans here, and I'm making the cheek plates that will go on either side of the rudder to thicken it up so that the pintles and all will fit on. Hoping I might be able to get both out of this one piece, so I've kind of moved it as close as I can to one edge in the bottom, and all I am doing is poking in some holes that I can then put some nails into and lay it out as far as the curvature goes. I don't really need a lot of holes here. I'm going to glue this on, and then I'll just trim the face of this flush with the existing rudder. But I need some idea of where this is going to get cut out. Hopefully I will be able to see these points. Oh yeah. Just going to drive these nails in a little outside of the pinholes I made so that I can cut it out a bit larger. Alright, well I can't put the piece of paper back on there, but we definitely had something moved when I put these ones into there, because they are completely out of whack. Anywho, just need to draw a rough thing here, so I'm going to do hopefully that'll hold. That'll get cut on the bandsaw, but first we need to clean up the rudder itself with the piece of mahogany that's sticking out over the edge here. Well, slight change of plans on the facing here due to the fact that I could not find another piece of nice clear red cedar to match one side, so I had to go back to a different board, and I've planed them down, I've cut them down roughly, and we need to plane them down so that this gudgeon will fit cleanly over that edge. So I've got the inside faces clean. We're just going to go and run each board through there. Simple, very thin pass on the thickness planer until that fits over. Alright, with these two faces on there, we are so close. So I think that, you know, just with a bit of belt sanding when after they're glued on, we can make them fit. So I have on one side here marked where it will go. Exactly. So then I can just match up the other side. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand the edges of these together as a unit so they are exactly the same. So that's going to drop in right there. Lots of overhang that I can flush trim or do a bit of a belt sand, or router or bandsaw to trim up. I have taken this edge to the disc sander here to clean it all up so that the router will follow it nicely. So now it's time to just prep this up and glue them on. We'll just soften this edge a bit. Now I wonder, now that I've scuff sanded and removed a bit of lumpy epoxy, that is very close to fitting on there perfectly. Now we're going to probably have a little bit of thickness inside with epoxy glue, so that will move slightly, but sand that down will be perfect. And I suppose all we need is glue on that face and that face. For those of you watching that don't live in the area around here, Vancouver, Greater Vancouver, and most of southwestern British Columbia has been, well, I guess like a lot of the world, has been suffering through one of its worst, we call it a drought. I mean, it's kind of a strange word to think that we're in a drought situation here in a temperate rainforest. But we barely saw a couple of millimeters of rain over 2.5, almost 3 months. You know, we got decent reservoirs, you know, so running out of water was not a fear really. But there were certainly some restrictions on our watering lawns, whatever. And that lasted up until, what, last weekend? And now it has rained almost constantly, hard, not just a little drizzle, but rained constantly for about 5 to 7 days now. I don't know how long, it would take for our reservoirs to fill up, but it's a little bit late in the season really to be worrying about rain, because we normally get a lot of it. That is where these two are evenly coming through on the lower portion here. I think that's pretty good right there. Hopefully, maybe I'll be able to hold it down at least a little bit until I get some more clamps on with that. And of course everything slides, but that's okay. Well, it's the next day, and I think we've successfully glued those on. I've got a bit of an overhang here. I think I can trim some of this on the bandsaw, and then I will take a flush trim router to the other edges. So just as I suspected in all the clamping, it looks like this side here has slipped a little bit down. I mean, they're good on this end. So I am going to, for symmetry, need to just shave off a little bit of this cheek here. And the other thing too is when I clamped it down onto the workbench, I was able to clean most of the squeeze out on the top side, but I've got quite a bit on the underside, so we'll see if we can clean that out. It looks like this side cheek is finishing right there. So I've transferred it to the other side, and by looking down the sides, I'm figuring that it comes back to normal about there. So I'm going to see if I can just use a French curve here to trace a line. And that area needs to be shaved off. I think the rest is just down to sanding. With the cheek plates glued on, I sanded, and I've got a couple of coats of varnish on all the edges. We're going to let that sit. We're ready to install it once sanded and varnished. So that's going to conclude this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and I do thank all my supporters for watching these videos and taking part in this build. See you next time.